Let's talk some chess. This is a game between two legends of chess history, Mikhail Tal and Tigran Petrosian. I just realized the first move's on the board. Don't want to spoil anything. This game was played in 1975, and it's a blitz game. So both players have a minute on the clock, and that generally means that more mistakes will be made because you obviously have time pressure, and blitz games are often not thought of as the highest level of chess because you can't really think out your moves and calculate all the lines, but they're very fun to analyze, especially because sometimes even the best players make some silly mistakes. So we'll see what happens in this game. We have Tal opening up with e4, e6 from Petrosian, d4 by Tal, and d5 challenging Tal's center here. Tal defends the pawn with knight to d2, so now this e4 pawn is defended, and Petrosian responds with knight to e7, and now the two knights have both sort of moved sideways, which is a funny kind of start to the game, but that doesn't matter. Ignore that. We have knight g to f3 by Tal, connecting the two knights and adding some protection to the d4 pawn if it comes to that. Now knight to d7 by Petrosian. So only pawn and knight moves so far. Tal breaks the pattern with bishop to bishop to d3, adding even more protection to the e4 pawn, and now we have the expansive c5 by Petrosian. So adding some pressure to the d4 pawn, which is protected at the moment, even threatening c4 to close off the position and just generally getting expansion on the queen side. Tal breaks up the tension a little bit with e captures on d5. We have knight captures on d5, and now Tal castles to get his king to safety. And king safety will be an important theme of this game, as it is in so many exciting games that we analyze. We have pawn takes on d4, and now knight to b3, adding another attacker to this pawn, so now the pawn is attacked twice by both knights, and also opening up a lane for the bishop to develop if it so chooses. We have knight to c5 by Petrosian. This comes with an attack on the bishop, and this is a nice bishop. It's controlling plenty of important squares. You don't necessarily want to just allow it to be captured, so Tal plays bishop to b5 with check, keeping the bishop alive, and after Petrosian blocks on d7, we have bishop captures on d7. So instead of trading the bishop for a knight, you trade the bishop for a bishop. Now queen captures on d7, so very, very normal moves here. And now we just have queen takes back on d4, equalizing the material and taking back the pawn that Petrosian had taken. So both queens are out in the center of the board. Both knights have been developed, and we'll see who can sort of find a positional advantage from here. Petrosian on this move jumps the gun a little bit. He plays queen to a4, and this is a nice square for the queen to be. You know, you're offering a queen trade, which is not the worst thing because your king is in the center of the board. This queen is defended by the knight, which is why, you know, if Tal takes, then knight takes, and that's fine. So it's not a bad square for the queen to be, but you need to make another move first, and that move is knight to f6. And we'll see the reason for this in a moment. So knight to f6 also offers a queen trade, because now the two queens are eyeing each other, and both the knight and the king are defending the black queen. So, you know, this is not a queen sacrifice. Tal doesn't want to trade here because then this is a fine position. He wants to maintain his queen on the board while Petrosian's king is in the center of the board. So here c4 is the likely move. And now you get queen to a4. And the idea here is that the knight is in a more favorable position. So we just saw how Petrosian immediately played queen to a4, but this knight on d5 is going to get him in trouble, and that's why it's better to play knight to f6 first and then continue with the plan of getting the queen to a4. But regardless, we'll see why that matters in a moment. So we get queen to a4, and now c4, and this is exactly the point of why you don't want the knight on d5. This c4 move now comes with a tempo, and you're forced to retreat the knight and waste a move retreating the knight, whereas if the knight was on f6, this obviously wouldn't be a problem. So the knight can move, but Petrosian decides to go for the attack and thinks of a little tactic here. We have knight takes on b3, and it looks like Petrosian is winning the exchange, or even winning a piece, because after winning the exchange. Because after a takes on b3, you have queen takes rook on a1. And now, after c takes on d5, Petrosian is up material, right? He just captured a rook for a knight, so now he has a rook for a knight, so he has a slight material advantage. But the problem is that Tal has this very nice, he has this pawn in the center, his queen's in the center of the board, And Petrosian's king is still stuck here on e8. So he has a slight material disadvantage, but attacking chances, which if we know Tal, he will certainly take advantage of. And here Petrosian sees this and plays queen to a6, retreating the queen, getting it in more of a defensive position. It might look like you want to castle here, so castling kingside, or sorry, castling queenside, getting out of the way. But this would be a terrible mistake because you have queen to c4 check. The king does not have many squares to go to. I forget why this is bad. Why is this bad? I think it runs into the same line. We'll see the line that it runs into. We have king to b8, and now the bishop develops to f4 with check, and this is a nasty check. You can't really escape the check other than maybe blocking it, but regardless, if you block, then you're losing the queen on a1 because when the bishop moved, it opened up a discovered attack from the rook to the queen. So that doesn't work. And I think if the king goes to d7, you get the same idea. Yeah, now the king, yeah. It's going to be the same idea where you're going to have this bishop coming off the back rank and you're going to get a discovered attack from the rook to the queen. So you can't castle here, and instead Petrosian brings his queen all the way back to a6. This now guards the c4 square, so that line we just saw where if Petrosian castles, the queen has this c4 check. That's no longer possible. Petrosian is guarding the c4 square, so that's fine. But now Tal tries to get his pieces into the attack and add the pressure on this king that's still stuck in the center of the board. So he plays rook to e1, lining up the king, the rook, and the king. Now the pawn is pinned, so the pawn cannot capture. And now Petrosian, now that the queen is guarding this c4 square, he deems it safe to castle, and he castles queenside. And this looks very suspect. It looks very scary and tricky, but it's actually the proper move. This is a perfect defense, and this is totally fine for Petrosian. Here Tal brings his bishop to f4, slicing off this way, cutting the king squares off, and, thoughts of bringing the rook over and maybe the queen over and developing an attack, and Petrosian has to figure out how to defend. So his first defensive move is a good one. He takes the pawn on d5 with a nice rook lift. This obviously comes with a tempo because it attacks the queen. And now Tal has to figure out he wants to save his queen, but he also wants to keep the attack going. So he starts with a nice in-between move, rook to c1, getting the rook on the open c-file and obviously checking the king. And again, not too much space for the king to move here. So Petrosian puts the king on d8, keeping it on the 5th rank. And now Tal continues with bishop to g5 check. And again, not necessarily clear how you want to defend this here. Petrosian just brings the king to e8, trying to keep it out of harm's way, keep it out of any checks from the queen. The queen can come to b4. The rook is in the game, so keeps it on the 8th rank, keeps it, keeps the king hopefully safe on e8. And now Tal makes probably the first kind of first Tal-like move of the game. He puts the knight on e5. And what's crazy about this is just a queen sacrifice. He's ignoring that the rook is attacking the queen on d4. But of course, this isn't a real queen sacrifice. If the rook takes on d4, then Tal has won in just a couple of moves. He has this beautiful rook to c8 check. And now the game is over. The bishop is slicing this way. The knight is taking off the d7 square. The rook is obviously checking the king. So your only move here is to block with the rook, and then rook takes rook is checkmate. So you can't take the queen, so it's not a real sacrifice. Can you take the knight? Can you take the knight on e5? Well, the answer is definitely no, because then it's just a one checkmate in one. Same idea, rook to c8. Now it's the queen instead of the knight that's covering the d7 square. The bishop's covering e7, and the game's over. So it looks like a sacrifice of a knight and a queen, but it's really not. And indeed, this knight now is adding pressure by cutting off the d7 square. And here Petrosian is in trouble, right? It's hard to kind of find the the proper move to play. But there is a move that is a robust defense and keeps the black pieces in the position to win the game. So see if you can find it while I give you a moment. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to move the board there while you were thinking. Ooh. Okay, sorry. Sorry, didn't mean to move the board. Okay. So the proper move, I realize there's one more line I wanted to show, but I don't want to... You were thinking about the move, so I don't want to make you wait in suspense. The proper move here after knight to e5, the proper defensive move is bishop to c5. And this looks like a weird move because you have the rook and the queen attacking the bishop. We'll get into that line later. The other line I wanted to show, maybe you were thinking of taking advantage of this fork on f6, so attacking the knight and the bishop and blocking the bishop. But in this position, you get rook to c8 anyways. This is obviously check after the king moves to e7 because the knight is taking these two squares. Then you have queen to b4 check, and we talked about this diagonal before being an important diagonal for the queen to control. Now the rook has to block on d6, and now you just make some space for the king, so you don't have to worry about this back rank mate, and now this is a better position for Tal. One of the pieces will fall, certainly, but I didn't do this line fully, but you can sort of get the idea of this is a pretty powerful attack for Tal. The rook is coming with check. The queen is pinning the rook to the king, even if the pawn takes out one of these pieces. Maybe I should have done that line more fleshed out, but hopefully you get the idea of why this doesn't work, because the queen pinning the rook on b4. So anyways, the proper move here is bishop to... oh, no, one more back. The proper move here is bishop to c5. This is the most robust defense. And it looks like a weird move, like I said, because it looks like a bishop sacrifice. The rook and the queen are attacking the bishop, but it's not. Oh, sorry, I keep moving the board. My bad. Just trying to scroll down to see my lines. Okay, so let's see all the different options about what happens if you obviously Petrosian, of course, is attacking the queen, so you have to do something about this. So what happens if the queen just, sucks it up and takes the bishop? Then you get rook takes, and you can't play this rook takes on c5. Because again, it looks like this is okay for white because you're threatening checkmate with the rook to c8 next turn. But now you get the fork works perfectly. F6 forks these two pieces. You have to now make space with h3, and then the pawn can just gobble up these pieces. Even if you you bring the queen to... Is this what I wanted to show? No, that's never mind. That's another line. We'll see that in a moment. So you don't want to take with the queen, but that sort of makes sense. You don't want to take the bishop with the queen. Instead, what if you take with the rook? So the rook takes bishop on c5. Then you get this move. I think this line makes a little bit more sense. Then instead of... The rook cannot take the queen here because of checkmate in a couple moves. So it's not like you're sacrificing your queen. But after this rook to c5, abandoning the defense of the back rank, you get queen to a1 check. And now the king is in trouble. There's no space for the king to go. So you have to block with the rook on c1. But now you get queen takes rook with check, bishop takes queen, and now the rook on d5 is free to take the queen because there's no more threat of rook to c8 with checkmate to follow. So now the rook takes the queen, and now you have two rooks for a knight and a bishop, and this is just much better for Tal. So this doesn't work either. So you basically can't take the bishop. And is there one more line I wanted to show? Queen to f4. Yeah, queen to f4. Did I want to show this? Yeah, queen to f4 doesn't work, trying to run away with the queen and maybe threaten this f7 pawn, because then you just run into f6, forking these two pieces. So this bishop move is a perfect move. It actually leads to a very winning position for Petrosian, and I think this is why this game is not super famous, because Petrosian missed this move, which would have essentially won the game for him. But again, it's a blitz game. It's hard when you're facing a great attacker like Tal and you have all these threats that you have to worry about, so we got to cut Petrosian some slack. But yeah, this probably is not why this game is super famous. This probably is why this game is not super famous. Instead of bishop to c5, Petrosian plays b6, but this move, unfortunately... So I think the idea behind b6 is, preparing to bring the bishop to c5, maybe. But this move, unfortunately... Oh, and maybe adding... It also adds a defense of the queen to c8, so now the rook can't just freely come to c8. So it looks like a sensible move, but it loses the game instantly. So see if you can find the move that Tal played that just put this game under wraps. Okay, so hopefully you can take advantage now of, we'll see. Queen to a4 check is the proper answer. And the idea here is the queen is, of course, checking the king, but it's also attacking the black queen on a7. So the king cannot move anywhere, right? And you can't block with the rook on b5 because then you just lose the queen, right? So you're essentially forcing Petrosian to make a queen trade, but after the queen is captured on a4, then the game is completely over because you get this rook to c8 idea, and now the queen is no longer guarding the c8 square. The king can't move anywhere. You block with a rook, and then rook takes, and this is checkmate. And this is actually the opera game mate that Morphy played, a very famous mate in chess that I've reviewed on this channel, and a beautiful finish where you have the bishop and the rook teaming up to checkmate the king. The knight's actually not doing anything here. Unfortunately for the knight, gets no credit in this final picture. So it didn't come to that. I think after queen to a4, Petrosian resigned the game. And it's good to think about why this, if you do play bishop to c5, why this queen to a4 move doesn't work. And I believe, actually, why doesn't this work? The king can... Yeah, I believe it's because after king to f8, the bishop is now blocking the c file, so the rook can't come to c8 with check, and also you're not forced to exchange queens because the pawn is protecting the queen. So you can take with the queen, and then there's no there's no rook to c8 threatening checkmate. Instead, you take back, and then this looks very good for black. This looks totally fine. Or even rook takes knight looks even better. So it doesn't. This queen to a4 move doesn't work if there's a bishop on c5 and there's a pawn on b7. But of course, Petrosian unfortunately didn't do either. Put the pawn on b6 and gets this checkmating idea. So an awesome game. I think again, not the most famous game because mistakes were made, but just because a mistake was made doesn't mean we can't appreciate how good of an attack it was and how exciting a finish it was between two awesome players. So thank you for watching. Drop a like, drop a subscribe. Let me know of any other games you'd like to see me review, and we'll see you next time.